Welcome, everybody. Purpose Driven with Alex Cornwall. We're here with an amazing, amazing guest. I think this is one of the best podcasts so far. I can't wait to hear Jen Morris, your story, just having your persona here. I am so excited for the audience to get to know you, your wonderful book that you've written, and just about your life. Thank you, Jen, so much for coming on. So excited for this.
Me too. Thank you, Alex, for this opportunity. I'm really excited to sit down and see where this conversation leads us.
Oh, it's going to be a great conversation. I hope people are ready for this amazing, amazing person in front of me to hear your story, where you are in your life, and what got you to this point. I mean, I'm just excited to hear your story. I really haven't heard it in depth, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've heard kind of long.
Well, it's okay. We've got like an hour, so we're good. We're good.
I love it.
Tell us a little bit about Jen Morris.
Well, gosh, about me now, I get the honor to say I'm an author.
Okay.
I think our childhood is the one thing that molds who we are, whether we like it or not. That's where all of our lessons are learned. That's how our personalities are developed. That's just where it all starts.
That is such a profound thought if you actually really think about that, because it's so true.
Yeah, it is. No matter whether you had drama or not.
Yeah.
It's where we were created and where it all started.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your childhood growing up. I know you've had a very impactful childhood.
Yes.
So if you don't mind sharing a little bit with us, and we'd love to hear the story.
Yeah. When I was 5 years old, my mother had died from suicide.
Okay.
And obviously, I was at a very impressionable age when that happens, right? When they say that your personality is established is at 5 years old.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, at first, my father had told me, that my mother had died. And, coming from a 5-year-old, I didn't even understand what that was. I couldn't comprehend death. My brother told me a story once. He said, the three of us, I have 2 older brothers, and the 3 of us were sitting around the kitchen table before the funeral. And he said that I posed this question. I said, so after the funeral, is that when Mom gets to come home? Like, I could not understand that she wasn't coming back.
Yeah.
And so living in that trauma of your mother dying, you just try to go day by day to try and make sense of it. I was so confused. I was scared. I was terrified. And then it was probably within the next year or 18 months that I was down at the neighbor's house and playing with a friend. Mm-hmm. And he turned to me and he said, your mother shot herself. That's how she died. And I said, no, she didn't. He said, yes, she did. He said, I saw them bring the body out and she shot herself. And I remember running home and telling my dad, I said, Dad, Johnny is such a liar. He told me that Mom shot herself and she didn't. She had a heart attack and that's how she died. And he said, well, it's true. She did. She shot herself.
Wow.
And as an adult, looking back on that situation, I mean, my father was just, you could, in pictures, you can just see the trauma in his face after she had died. I could tell you the date just by looking at a picture. The night and day.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
he didn't even look at me, nothing, but that's where I created my first true belief in myself that, this wasn't an accident. This trauma was deliberate. My mother deliberately left me. And, my first belief of I'm not enough, God's made a mistake, really was solidified in that moment.
Now, why did you have that belief? I mean, for a 5-year-old to think that I'm not enough, it's my fault. I mean, that had to weigh on you. Even at 5 years old, you really had that thought.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, your parents, and I think especially a mother, she was a stay-at-home mom. My father was a dentist, and she was my lifeline. She was the one that I spent the majority of my time with, who taught me the majority of things. I mean, just pictures, the few pictures that I have of being with her, I would just idolized her and wanted to be with her constantly. So Yeah, without knowing it. Obviously, it's something that was unconscious to my knowledge,
Yeah.
but that was where my first identity really was created, was in that moment of finding out that she had died from suicide and not a heart attack.
And not a heart attack. Wow. And you had to carry that through your whole teenage growing up and everything.
Carried that through my whole teenage years, and subsequently my father, he, from stories that I've heard, but before she had passed, had started drinking. And after she had passed, became a heavy alcoholic and actually ended up dying from liver cirrhosis when I was 25. So then I'm raised by an alcoholic father. And there was one very specific event shortly after I found out about my mother that I remember waking up. It was the middle of the night. I came out in the kitchen and heard that the television was on downstairs, went downstairs, and I was standing there and I was witnessing my father, who was so drunk, trying to turn off the television. And he had the remote in his hand and he couldn't even push the button. He kept missing the remote. I mean, could barely get off the couch. He was that drunk and he was trying to explain to me, I can't get this television turned off. And as I was watching him, I came up with my second belief, is that I have no one to take care of me. I mean, look at this man, God bless him. He can't even take care of himself. But now I have no one. So not only have I been abandoned by my mother because I wasn't enough to keep her alive, I wasn't a good enough reason, I now have no one to take care of me. And I'm like 5 or 6 years old.
What did that do to you? Like, I mean, growing up, that gave you a sense of like independence, I'm assuming.
You know what? It didn't.
That you took care of yourself, right?
I flipped the opposite way.
You did?
Because I lived in such trauma. I lived in such trauma, such fear and anxiety that I always just tried to search for someone to take care of me. I'm like, these people cannot take care of me. In fact, it was probably a few years after that I would go through my father's closet when he was gone, and I would literally search for adoption papers because I was convinced. I'm like, there is no way I was born into this family.
Really?
There have got to be adoption papers in here somewhere, and I'm going to find my real family, and they're going to be amazing and wonderful. And of course, I never found any, but it's just that's how I lived. It was just constant trauma. Who can take care of me? Who do I need to be for someone to like me?
How long did you live with that?
Oh, gosh. Oh, my heavens. Up into my 40s.
Up into your 40s?
In my mid 40s, yep.
I mean, I know when trauma like that happens. I mean, I'm assuming. I've never had it happen in my life, but there's a weight that you carry to a point where it's even hard to talk about. I mean,
for sure.
When was the first time you realized that I need to work on this and there's something that's wrong?
I had always gone to a therapist.
Okay.
Off and on. Started when I was a teenager. Finally, my father said, you might need to go talk to someone about this. And went to a man that I know. He was a family friend and he was a psychologist and was amazing. Learned many things from him. And had, I call them God's graces along the way. When I had Mackenzie, our oldest, I was holding her. And I knew that how sick my mother must have been to have left 3 children, because there was no way I would ever leave this baby, because I was a healthy woman having a baby. And I'm like, okay, she must have been sick. She must have been sick. So it wasn't until about my mid 40s that, those things start to catch up with you.
Yeah, they do.
You live a life of always wanting and wondering, why do I not have these close relationships with people, with friends? It can only go so deep. Well, it's because I lived a life protecting my heart, because there is no way, Alex, I would ever let you get close to me, because the last time I let someone get close to me, which was my mother, she left me. And it's just, there's no way I'm going to let you do that.
You bring up it's so often that we think about the trauma that we face in the past, and it could be, a family member suicide, or just how we were raised, or the parents,
absolutely.
the neglection of our parents, or anything. It could be anything, And those walls, and I call them like those unconscious walls. We don't know that we're putting up those walls.
Exactly.
You don't know that we're putting up that wall in our heart, not letting those people fully come in. And how often, just by accepting the trauma, that it did happen, by let alone just accepting, like, yeah, that happened to me. How many walls just that would break down? Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, for sure. And I really thought I had moved through it.
Yeah.
You know, in my mid-40s, my husband and I both went to heavy therapy together as a couple and then individually to work on ourselves. And I remember the first time that I met, they're a couple actually, I met with him and we were talking about my childhood, and he kept asking me about my childhood. And I just was thinking, why does it keep reverting back to my childhood? I mean, like, I worked through this.
Yeah.
I can now go to her grave without sobbing. I can now have a conversation about her without tearing up or choking up. Like, I really think I've moved through this. But we really don't.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that we don't get over it, because, you know, I don't think you ever get over suicide or a death of someone close to you.
I don't think, I think it's that acceptance of it.
It's
actually
it's
just
your new normal. Your new normal.
Hey, look, it happened.
Yes.
It is what it is. And let's go back a little bit, because that's one thing I do want to touch on is your relationship. You know, George Morris, you guys, family friends, I love you both so much.
Oh, we love you guys
and
too.
I love having you in my life and the impact that you've had on my life. I'm not going to tear up. It's been such a blessing for me. So Jen, I don't know if you realize how much you mean to me, you and George. And
thank you.
I want to touch on that relationship, because you've known George for a very long time.
Yes.
And it's so interesting listening to his story and his point of view on this whole story. He was there. He heard the ambulance come and his side of it. I mean, let's talk about that a little bit, like your upbringing with him and how that came about.
Right.
If you don't mind us going into that.
Well, it's so funny how we're connected. And we were connected clear back when I was 5 years old, because our backdoor neighbors the mother ended up being his stepmother. So there was a divorce there. And then she married George's father.
Yeah.
And my brother remembers George running around in the backyard that was, you know, right behind our backyard. So he was like, who is that little kid over there running around being obnoxious? And it was George Morris.
That's George for you.
I know.
I love it.
I know. So, you know, they moved off to Paris for a couple years. His father got transferred over there. But we ended up going to junior high together. And he'll tell the story that, well, Jennifer Morris asked me if I was going to this dance. Well, back then it was Schofield.
Yeah.
Jenny Schofield came down and asked me if I was going to the dance. And it was because he was the only one in the hall and I felt sorry for him. So I was just trying to be nice.
I love it.
So we ended up going to part of junior high and all through high school, but we had different friend groups. We never dated.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was such a nerd. Never dated. And it wasn't until a few years later when I was actually living with my aunt and uncle, and my cousin Rob Oakey we're all the same age, graduated the same year, and so he and Rob are best friends, and he would always come over to the house, and that's how it all started.
Now, was it hard to develop a relationship with George with your past trauma? Looking back
absolutely.
on it.
Yes, absolutely. You know, like, again, I can only go so deep with you if I really am guarding my heart.
Yeah.
The relationship can only go so deep. I always I craved these deep relationships. You know, I would pray to God, please bring a friend, please bring a friend to me that I really connected with. But every time that person would show up, it could only go so deep.
Yeah.
And with him, you know, he was adopted when he was a baby at 3 days old. And unbeknownst to him, unconscious, he had abandonment issues. So here you have two people in a marriage where one, he was guarding her heart. I will never let you fully give you my heart. And the other one who says, well, I'm never going to leave because I have abandonment issues and I will stay here through thick and thin.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a recipe for a very deep, lovingly thriving marriage. I mean, it's a marriage, but again, it can only go so deep.
It can only go so deep.
Yeah.
And it's something you guys have worked on
Oh yeah, absolutely.
for a very long time. And I do want to touch on relationship because a lot of times past trauma, we don't want to accept it. We don't want to face it. And so we just try to move on. Like you did that how often in your life, just moved on. You thought you were fine. You're like, yeah, I'm fine. I've already gone through that. I don't need to deal with that shit anymore in my life. Right.
Right.
But how much of it is actually holding us back?
Oh, absolutely. And one thing that I learned that was so vital in therapy in my 40s as we were going to this couple, I attended this seminar, and it was right when I was doing all of my self-work, meditating daily, journaling, reading. And it was so incredible after this seminar that I went to, I had this realization, oh my gosh, I've been living my life looking through this lens of this terrified 5-year-old child. Like every action I had taken, every decision. Why wasn't spontaneous? Because I wanted my life to be predictable, because that's what kept me safe. That's what kept me comfortable.
How did you shift from that?
Well, once I made the realization, I remember going back to the therapist and going, I think I'm healed. Like I have made this realization and I am healed. Like this is never going to happen to me again. And as she proceeded to say, that's wonderful that you've done that, but I need you to know that that 5-year-old little girl will always be with you. Always. She's never going away. However, when she comes up, you're going to be able to recognize her. And you're going to be able to make the conscious decision, do I stay in this 5-year-old terrified and make decisions that way? Or do I self-soothe myself, comfort myself, make different decisions, and move on as an adult? And so it has now become this, kind of a...
face it.
You face it.
You
do.
face it.
And sometimes I get trapped in her.
Yeah.
And it is so obvious. It is so obvious when I do. And then other times I'm like, okay, you know what? And I really have to do a lot of self-talk and go, it's okay. It's going to be okay. We're going to just sit in this anxiety for a moment, but we're still going to move forward.
I think that's a really important concept right there that people should hear and understand, that it'll never go away.
Right. Yes.
Like you'll never get over your anxiety 100%.
Right.
You'll never get over the depression. You'll never get over that being or seeing yourself, that 5-year-old girl, or that person that, that little boy that's just there. You'll never be able to just get through that. You have to accept it in your life.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's the decisions you make following. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
That's really huge. Well, let's go back a little bit. I mean, because of this trauma and the work that you've done, you said you are an author. You're an author.
So exciting.
I know. I love your book, by the way.
Thank you.
You've read it to us as a group for a couple times. But let's go back. I mean, you've got your little bunny.
I know.
And I know that's a representation of a lot of things that you hold dear to your heart. So explain to us a little bit about why bunny and what all this means and the concept around the book.
Okay. Well, this bunny, when I was 5, I had this stuffed animal Snoopy that I would carry with me everywhere after my mother's death because it gave me so much comfort. It was just the one thing that I could hold and comfort myself with. Mm-hmm. So when this book came out, I wanted to be able to have that representation in the book and create a bunny for someone to hold. So when they're reading the book, it'll give them something to comfort them, no matter what they're going through. So this book is, it's a story of my childhood. A little. I always say it's Hollywoodized for sure. I wish this was how it happened. I mean, not that how it happens, because actually in the story, the mother dies, but this is a way and a reminder for people who have lost someone, whether it's suicide, whether it's just someone who's lost someone from death, that we're always connected to the ones that we love, even after they have passed. It's just, this has been such a spiritual experience for me to write this and how it came about, that I really think of myself, I'm just a messenger.
Why spiritual?
Because the words that have come out on this page, and it's all written like a Dr. Seuss, it rhymes.
Yeah, I love it.
It's written so a child who is 5 years old will understand it, and also an adult who has gone through this can find love and comfort in it. But it's just, it's words have fallen onto this page that I can't, I mean, let me read. This is my favorite sentence in the whole book. And this, like, truly, I remember exactly where I was sitting, the time of day it came through. And I'm like, I didn't come up with that.
Yeah.
It says, Jenny. So the premise of the story, before I read this, just to kind of give you a little bit of a background, Jenny has this bunny, and she is asking her mom, why do I really like this bunny? And so her mother uses the bunny as an example to teach her what love is. And she's telling her, look, leave your bunny on the blanket and walk down to the ocean with me. Yeah. Do you still love your bunny? Do you still have those feelings? And she goes, well, of course. And she said, well, that's what love is. Love will always connect you together, whether you're with your bunny or not. And so afterwards, Jenny now understands this concept. And her mother says, Jenny's mom gave a smile. Let's go home, she softly said. The sun has fallen asleep, and that means it's time for bed. I mean, I'm not a poet. I did not major in English in college. It really just flowed out of me.
Yeah.
So it was really fun.
And how has that helped with your healing?
Oh my gosh.
Writing this book. I mean, explain that a little bit of putting, and I really want to go back to, because you did mention that you've, through meditation and through journaling, you've been able to heal the most.
Absolutely.
And let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, to the point where you've written a book, but the power of journaling and what it does for your healing. How has that truly helped you, and that writing this book helped you in your healing?
Writing something down, I just think sometimes my mind gets so jumbled and I just feel so overwhelmed at times. But if I'm able to sit, take a moment, write down things, even if it's a to-do list, but just questions that I may pose in my journal, or things I might be thinking about, like I'm struggling with this, and just writing it out, it takes that anxiety away. It takes the anxiety away, and it gives me just a clearer perspective on what I need to do moving forward. And through that, I think once you work through a trauma and you are able to go on the flip side and help someone else, I think, not that I'm not affected by it, because I always will be. That 5-year-old's always in me. But when you are able to move and help someone else through their trauma, I think that's when you're thinking, when you've like gone over the hurdle, like, okay, now I can help someone else. Like, I have to be on my game for me to help someone else, or help you with something. Like, I have had to work through it to be able to learn the lessons, to be able to teach someone else.
See, I love that concept, because that is so true. And that's one thing I love about, living a life of growth and contribution. That's where that growth and contribution really comes into play. Without contribution, there will be no growth.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
100%.
Right.
And if you truly want to get over any type of problem or situation or trauma or anything, serve. I remember I've been going through some stuff these past few weeks with, you guys are very aware. One thing that George told me on the phone, like, he asked me, we're supposed to speak tomorrow at Summit. And he's like, and I was like, I really just don't want to speak. I have even right now, like, I'm supposed to speak tomorrow. I have no desire to speak. One thing he told me, he's like, Alex, you want to get over this funk? Speak.
Yeah.
Go serve. Go help others with this. And I guarantee you'll impact their life.
Oh, absolutely. And I think even one of the things, it's not even necessarily the action, but once you do, I'm excited to hear what you say tomorrow, by the way.
I have no idea what I'm going to say.
Yeah, it'll come to you. Once we do that, it always comes back to us that someone else is struggling with the same thing. And
You're never
isn't that
alone.
healing? You're never alone, but we feel so isolated in our struggle. And isn't that such a gift? Like, someone comes up to you, oh, dude, that's what I needed to hear. Like, I needed to hear that today. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And I think that's what, for me, my belief is that that is why we are here. We are meant to have these trials, and we are meant to work through them and figure it out, because our responsibility is to help our next person, to help our brother or our sister.
It's so funny you bring all this up because the one thing that's been going through my head in these past few weeks, and I've written it down multiple times, is God will not give you a trial you cannot overcome. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's literally impossible.
For sure.
But you've got to be willing to overcome it. You got to be willing to actually take the action and the steps to actually do it.
Yes.
And it's amazing to me how there are opportunities put in your path if you're leading that life of growth and contribution that will help you. I mean, even doing this podcast, it's like, do you really want to do this podcast when you're going through shit at home?
Right.
You know, it's hard.
It's just about the last thing on your mind.
Exactly.
Right?
It really is. But I know it's the one thing you need to do.
Yeah.
You know, is it the last thing you want to do is write a children's book to rekindle or remember all those traumas in the past?
Right.
And I can only imagine what emotions that brought up writing this book.
Oh, yeah.
But look at the good that's come out of it.
Right. Oh, for sure. For sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And it's so hard. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, I have a theory that those people who have accomplished great things in this world, whether it's building a skyscraper, whether it's starting a nonprofit or building a company, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's come out of trauma. Trauma from their childhood, whether it's I'm going to show you, world, that I can do this to make myself feel worthy of myself. Yep. It's out of that. MADD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. This woman lost her child to a drunk driver. That was severe trauma. And look what she did to create out of it. I mean, you look at these big things. These people suffered trauma. And I would say every person that you study, any kind of documentary, it all came out of trauma for some reason behind it, whether they wanted to prove themselves to the world or they had an experience happen to themselves.
Or they're hiding themselves behind the success.
Oh, that's a good one.
I mean, really think about it. Like, and that's actually something I've been actually toying with me personally is like, am I so driven to be successful just to have that oversee or just be a blanket over the true issues that I'm facing in my life that I don't want to deal with?
Ooh, that's a really good one.
I mean, really think about how many people do you know that are very, very successful, very rich, they built amazing companies, right? But you look at their personal life and they're hollow. Oh,
exactly. I mean, they're not fulfilled. There's no joy.
There's no joy. And I truly believe it's because they're hiding behind that success that they have.
Yeah.
They're so driven over here that they're not wanting to deal with the actual true problem that they have.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely.
And I do see that as something that people struggle with. I mean, I struggle with it. Everybody does to a point in their life, and it's that acceptance of like, wait a second, I need to pivot here because that's not the life I want to live.
Right.
Well,
and I have another theory, my book of theories.
I love it. That's your next book.
I like that title. Jen's Book of Theories. Love it.
I've got the Epistle of Alex. So
I love it.
I write in the Epistle of Alex every single day.
Good for you. But it's about your 40s or 50s that you start coming into where it catches up to you, whether you like it or not. So it's a time in your life where you think, hey, do I want to live my life like this?
Yeah.
The second half of my life? Because really, we're about halfway through. I mean, planning on making it to 100, but that's the goal. But it really does. It starts coming up and hitting you hard. Like, are you, and some people just continue to stay in it, which is fine. And some people are like, you know what? I really need to dive deep.
Well, and I honestly think if it wasn't for people like you and having the courage to write books like this and to actually go out and speak and share your story, how many people are lost in that mix who could have been helped? You know what I'm saying?
Well,
the opportunity that we have to share our story, and that's another thing too, is just open your mouth. Yeah, everybody has a story.
We all do.
Everybody has trauma. Everybody has trauma that they faced in their life.
Yes.
If you're not willing to go out and at least talk about it, how do you know how many people you're not helping?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, my most fondest texts and messages that I've had is the time when I didn't want to do this anymore, do my podcast, I was rethinking, do I really want to do this? Like, it's taking time out of my business and out of this and out of that. Like, why am I doing this? And then I get that text, hey, thank you. I was contemplating committing suicide. But now that I've heard your story, I know there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Wow, Alex, that's amazing.
That keeps you going.
Yeah.
Even if it was that one person, there's nobody else.
Right.
I don't care.
Yep.
So for you to have the courage to even write this book, I mean, kudos to you. I love it.
Kind. Thank you. You know what? And that, what really goes back, because, even though it's a children's book, there were a million reasons for me not to do this. A million things that came up. Oh, I could easily put this on the shelf. And I did for a little while.
I was about to say, how
actually.
long did you put it on the shelf? Because I know that there's a story behind that.
There's a story. It was a couple years that it really took me to get it and write it. And I called my cute brother over and I said, I'm writing this book. I want you to read it and see what you think. And it was rhyming. And he said, you should really leave the rhyming up to Dr. Seuss. He was the magician at it. You shouldn't really go there. Rewrite the story, but just write it. Don't rhyme it. And so I said, okay, fine. Sat down, tried to write it. Not a word, not a sentence. I couldn't even get anything out. So I put it on the shelf for another 6 months. And then when I was in the car waiting for kids or something in the driveway, I would just, doodle with it on my phone. It was always on your mind. It was always on my mind. Always. It just always came out as a rhyme for whatever reason. And then wrote it again, had him come over and said, you know what? I don't know why, but it's supposed to rhyme. And this book is supposed to be here. So I want your opinion, but I need you to know something. It's going to be here whether you like it or not. I just need you to know that. But I really want your opinion. And he said, okay, I like it. Let's sit down. We need to edit it. And I'm like, what? But it's already edited. Like, it's perfect. He said, no, it's not. We really need to kind of fix a couple things. And so during that process of he and I sitting down side by side at my computer and going through each sentence was truly one of the most precious memories of my brother and I spending time together and over the biggest trauma in our life.
Yeah.
But there were moments where I said, don't you feel like mom's like looking over our shoulder and telling us what to type? Because I just felt like magic was happening.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So it's been just the journey has been so amazing.
I think that's amazing what you said too. And something that I hope listeners catch on is something worth doing is always on your mind.
Oh, absolutely. And you're meant to do it.
And you're always,
you are meant. I totally believe that, Alex.
How often do we try to side something, like put it on the shelf?
Yes.
Like, nope, that's not for me.
Yes.
But it's always coming back into our life.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm such a believer in that. I think I don't want to be an astronaut. I don't want to hike Mount Everest. But that coming back to me, the book, writing a book, boy, you could do so much good helping someone else, always came back into my mind. And I'm such a believer in that. If it keeps coming in your mind, you are meant to do this. Yep. You are meant to do whatever it is.
It's acting upon that knowing. I think, who was it? Jamie Kearney? Is that her name?
Jamie, It Cosmetics.
Yeah.
Love her.
I heard her speak once at a Tony Robbins event, and she mentioned, she's like, we all know, you have that know in the head, but it's when you start listening to the knowing, that knowing right here in your chest, that you need to act upon that.
Yeah.
And how often do we just overlook that knowing?
Yes.
And we get in our head and we're like, no, people won't listen to that. People aren't going to buy your book. Like, no, you know, and you start listening to that and now people aren't going to listen to the podcast. Why are you doing it?
Right.
But it's that knowing that, no, I need to do it because this is telling me.
Yes.
Call it spirit, call it God, I think it's our intuition. I think it's us connecting with our higher power.
Yeah.
I truly believe that's what it is.
And she has such a beautiful story of she went through all of those struggles. You know, these people who have accomplished, they just kept moving forward. And
they never shelved it.
They never shelved it. Exactly.
They tried to.
Yeah.
She tried to. Yes. She tried to quit, but she couldn't do it.
Yes, but she knew. And I love the phrase. I heard her speak at a Tony Robbins as well. And she said the best phrase. She said, I knew there were people out there who needed this product.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's how I feel about my book.
Yeah.
When it started coming out and people are just like, oh my gosh, I needed this or this reminder, or this gave me such love and comfort. Or I was like divinely inspired to speak to someone and found out that her mother had actually committed suicide within the year. I'm like, I knew it. I'm like, I knew there were people who needed this message and they needed to be able to start healing from it and be comforted from it.
Yeah. And I hope people take action on that. Like, because I guarantee you everybody has it.
They do. They do. And if they just believed it, they believe that message. I mean, those listeners who are listening to this, if you have that message, you are the one meant to do it.
And guess what? Usually when you're following that knowing, it will be the most uncomfortable thing you do.
Oh, so uncomfortable.
And it sucks and it's hard and you're vulnerable and you're going to cry and it's going to be, and you're going to want to quit every single day.
Yes.
And you're going to go, why in the hell am I doing this?
Right.
Every single moment.
Yeah.
But that's when you know you're on track.
You're on
because
track.
Growth happens when you're uncomfortable.
Yes. Yes.
The most uncomfortable times in my life are been the most growth exponentially in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, just this last week was one of them that was just like, like crazy.
Yeah.
And I needed to go through it. I needed to go through the shit. I needed to go through the problems that I was facing because I wouldn't have got the realization of where I need to become or who I need to become. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. You know, if you haven't already, I just finished Ed Milet's book, The Power of One More.
I'm reading it right now. I love it.
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
If you haven't come to this part yet, he says something that was so, like, I took this phrase out of the entire book. He talks, when he's talking about change, he said, change is uncomfortable and it's meant to be uncomfortable because it has to change you. You have to be changed and it is an uncomfortable process. Yeah. And for some reason, I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, no wonder I'm always avoiding it because I don't like that, to feel uncomfortable, that feeling. But it's so true.
And sometimes it's scary.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
Really think about, like, go back to those walls that we put up in our lives and those walls that we put up on our heart. I don't want to tear down one of those walls with that idea that I could get hurt again.
Right.
It's scary.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
terrifying,
saying? It's very terrifying. And so to actually trust the process, like we always hear everybody say, no, you just got to trust the journey, be in the journey, trust the process. It's hard.
It's hard.
Life is hard.
Yep.
And if you tell yourself it's not, you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that I love it when you started this. We are all a product of our childhood. Period.
For sure.
We are all a product of that, whether we like it or not.
Right.
It's us accepting that and moving forward is the hardest thing to do.
Well, and even uncovering it. Because like I said, I didn't make this realization really until it was actually a Tony Robbins event, Date with Destiny. Someone in the crowd had said something, and I was in the middle of my heavy therapy and my journaling and my self-discovery and meditation, that I was able to hear that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I made that realization. Wow.
But one thing I do want to touch on, if you weren't doing that work beforehand, that meditation, that journaling, that work on yourself, would you have come up with that realization?
I don't think so.
That's a big part. Because
I wouldn't have.
I agree. Like, if I wouldn't have gone through what I did with the mental state of me knowing that I could get out of it, I wouldn't be sitting across from you today. I would have been put up on the wall and said, nope, I'm done. Not doing this anymore.
Right.
And so I think that's a big point, is it's a continual process of growth.
Oh, for sure.
And I guarantee you're still working on shit.
Oh, I am. And well, then the thing about it is that you keep coming up with discoveries.
Yeah.
You keep coming in with situations like, why am I so hesitant to be around this person? Oh, well, it's a trigger. Oh, I didn't know I was living my life being triggered by that. That's a trigger because that person had the same characteristics as my father did, being an alcoholic. I never knew who he was going to be. And it was like highs and lows and highs and lows. And that, so when I'm with someone who's volatile or passive aggressive, It is the biggest trigger for me. And I like to say I'm a professional fleer out of, fight or flight. I'm
Yep.
out of there.
Yeah.
And I will not.
Well, how have you trained yourself? Because I truly believe you have to train yourself and work on that every single day. What have you done to overcome some of that? And also, I want to hit on how have you overcome that sense of not abandonment, but was it abandonment?
It was not enough.
Not enough. How have you overcome that? Let's talk about what you've done to overcome that.
Well, again, it's one of those things that I don't think you ever overcome, but you become.
Say that again.
It is one of those things you never overcome.
I think people need to understand that and listen to that. I agree.
Yeah.
It will be something you live with for the rest of your life.
Period. But you become aware. You become aware when those come up because they're patterns.
Yeah.
They're what built our personalities. These experiences are so in our bodies, and how, especially, I lived that pattern for 45 years.
Yeah.
Really. And you just become aware. So when these situations come up, if I'm having to deal with someone who I know triggers me like that, I really have to talk to myself and go, you know what? They're living in their childhood tragedy, in their trauma. It's okay. This doesn't have anything to do with you. I'm going to show up as my best self. And sometimes it works and sometimes I get triggered.
Yeah.
But even if I do get triggered, I'm like, okay, self-soothe, work on myself. We're okay. It's okay. This is just triggering you from your past. It's okay. We're still going to move forward again, make different decisions, but you just become aware and things show up easier. Like I can spot it really quick when I've been triggered.
Yeah.
And I can get over it faster. Something that would take me days, that negative, that heavy feeling of anxiety, it's done in an hour. Now it's done after a meditation.
And how has that helped in your current relationship with George?
Well, we're now that we've come up, we've figured out what both of our childhood traumas are. We have a better relationship, deeper, more loving, more open and vulnerable than we ever have. Last night we even had something came up and it was something so small, but to me it was a big deal. Mm-hmm. And so I said, hey, I need you to know, I don't like the way you're responding in this situation. It triggers me. And even though I need to take responsibility, I said, I feel like this, one of the best marital advice we got is always say things in I form. Instead of you're making me so angry, I feel upset when I hear you say this. Again,
I need to take that advice.
I always take responsibility for yourself.
I'm going to.
Yeah. Because again, it's not someone else. We're just being triggered and we're allowing ourselves to be triggered by someone else. It's always us. It is always us.
It's our reaction to it.
Our reaction to it.
That's one thing I've.
And what it also does, once you work through it, is you can pick up people in their childhood traumas so easy.
Yep.
And you have empathy for them. You have compassion for them because you're like, you know what? I'm giving them a get out of jail free card because I know that they're really showing up in their trauma and it's okay. And you can love them even more.
Do you think you would have been able to get through this trauma without George in your life?
You know what? He's the one who really sparked starting therapy in our 40s. He went on a journey and was like, I don't know if I want to be honest and completely candid. He didn't know if he wanted to be in a relationship with me with such a closed heart. Like how he was really looking, how do I want to live the rest of my life? And is this the person I want to be with? And then I started going through it and no, I don't know if I would, but it would have taken some kind of an event. Maybe if we had ended up getting a divorce, that would have pushed me into it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but all of the key people that I needed and were so amazing came into my life at the right time. And it was like the perfect storm to start to heal.
It's that whole saying, and I know it gets overused so much, life is happening for you.
Oh,
it's not happening to you.
Yeah,
and
right.
Sometimes that's hard to remember. And like, sometimes it feels like, no, it's happening to me. Damn it. This is happening to me. I don't want to accept that it's happening for me.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard.
Oh, absolutely.
But I am a firm believer too, that people come in your path when they're meant to. It's whether we accept them or not. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying?
Yep.
Because how often do people come into our path and you look back going, man, I really wish I would have cultivated that relationship better. That would have helped me
Yeah.
out more.
Well, and that's one thing from this that I'm so grateful that I can now look, those relationships that I've had for so many years, everyone has said, boy, you're different. You're just different. But it's because I keep the people in my life that I want to create a deeper relationship. And those that I do, I'm able to create that relationship with them. Hey, you know what? I want you to know how much you mean to me.
Yeah.
How grateful I am to you for this time, for this dinner. I love you so much. And those are the people who I now know I want to spend my time with, that I share that with them. And it's easy for me to do. I mean, Alex, being raised by an alcoholic father, we did not express to each other, I love you. Nothing. I mean, that was way too vulnerable. I mean, look back on my father and I think, wow, you kept a roof over our heads. You went to work every day. We always had food on the table. We had clothes to wear.
Yeah.
I am grateful for that. However, emotionally, he was nothing, did not show up as anything.
I bet you he was empty.
Oh, so empty himself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I remember 3 times in my childhood, he told me he loved me. And it was so traumatic for him that he would burst into tears when he said that. And it was uncomfortable I could see it physically. It was just so uncomfortable for him to do that. But look at his trauma. His spouse had killed herself.
I mean, just think
and left.
of
The abandonment.
Yeah, you feeling that unwanted and unworthy, and I mean, having your spouse do that.
Right. And so
that's-
with it, yeah.
And that's one thing that, like, you know, I don't, you know, my story. I mean, I have been to that dark place where I wanted to commit suicide. Like, I was there. I was done. And when you're going through that and you have that thought, I thought everybody would be better without me here. I had made that conclusion. No, my kids, my spouse at the time, my parents, I'm doing them a service by getting rid of me. That really was a thought that I had. It wasn't until afterwards that I realized that is far from the truth. The impact that you have, not just that, but generational impact of just, you know,
Absolutely.
and, you know, I can empathize with those people that do commit suicide because I've been to that dark place, but I can also see the other side going, man, I can't believe I went that far.
Right.
You know?
Well, and I don't think any of us are, I think it can happen to anyone.
I can't,
All of us.
I believe.
And we can easily go there. And I
think Keisha gave me the best advice last week when I was going through everything. She's like, Alex, you need to stop listening to yourself and you need to start talking to yourself.
wow, that's profound.
She's like, I heard it on a podcast.
See, someone else showing up. But again, you
honestly,
learned something.
that is something that I will never forget. Some advice, us going through our trials, you know, last week and what we're going through. That advice alone is like, you know, there's good self-talk and there's bad self-talk, but even like yourself, you're telling yourself you had to talk yourself out of those triggers. You had to talk yourself. But if you were listening to yourself, would you have gotten out of those triggers? No, because you were listening to that emotion. You were listening to that
for
anxiety.
sure.
You were listening to that.
Well, and
you
I
get what I'm
think-
saying?
Yes, but I think, again, one of my theories
Yeah.
in life, I think that when we go to that place, our souls are really screaming at us to make a change and telling us, this isn't who you are.
Yep.
I need you to feel this bad because this is not who you are. And when you are able to feel happiness and joy, you're living in who you are. So God created you to be.
100% agree.
It's just like we make it, I think we are fooled by that voice, by that anxiety, by that fear. And we think we go deeper and deeper the more we listen to it, when really it's there to tell us, you're going the wrong way. Your thoughts are wrong. You're going down the wrong path.
Yep.
You have to turn around and go the other way because that's where we are. We're back there. You took a wrong turn on the path and we're back there. You've got to go back and find yourself. And when you start working through it and you start being able to feel that happiness, it's because you're living the life that God intended you to live.
Yeah.
To feel happy. You know, I always go back to, I always play this domino game, and I always go back that men are created that they may have joy. And so I'm always thinking, when I'm in that dark place, I think, well, I'm not feeling joy right now, but I'm supposed to feel joy because that's who God created all of us to feel joy.
Yeah.
So what do I need to do to get back there? Because that's who I was created to be. This dark, that voice in my head telling me everything I shouldn't be doing and I'm a failure and I shouldn't do this, and fear and anxiety. That's not who God created me to be. Yeah. I don't think God went down the line. You have anxiety, you have depression, you have fear, whatever. I think we're all created to be able to feel joy, and we just need to figure out how we do that.
Well, how do you feel joy?
You know what? I've come to believe, working through this, I think joy is a skill. I 100% think joy is a skill. It is something that we need to practice. It is something that, I can practice depression, anxiety, fear all day long. I know how to go there because I practiced it so much. But on the flip side, you need to start practicing some joy. You need to figure out, and it's a skill. It is a skill to learn, to figure out how to do it. And it is a choice.
It's a choice.
Absolutely.
You can choose every single day to wake up with a life of gratitude or a life of I'm a victim.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm happy or I'm not happy. Yeah. So many people you can lie to yourself and tell yourself you're happy, but it's a choice to actually feel the emotion of happiness.
Right.
Two totally different things.
Absolutely.
And it's a choice that you have to make. And that's one thing that I think you can tell yourself all day long, but you have to search the feeling and the emotion behind it.
Right. And I think the one place that just actually sparked a memory, it's that I really was able to feel joy and happiness when I started loving myself. And how do you do that? I just told myself I love myself. Like, I love you. I love you. Over and over, because I never heard that as a child.
Yeah.
I just didn't. I wasn't in a situation where I heard it. I don't remember my mother saying it to me, but I assumed it. But I never heard that. So I started telling myself, I love you. I'm proud of you. And that in and of itself
talking to yourself.
Started my journey.
Yeah.
That was really the first thing that started my journey of being able to heal, is that I accepted who I was.
Was there a sense of forgiveness in there as well?
Oh, for sure.
Talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's a big thing that we're always taught in life and society, especially in Utah, thou shalt forgive thy neighbor and other people. But it's not too often they talk about, you need to forgive yourself.
Yeah. Oh, number one. And a lot of times it came up to me like, oh, Jen, if you had learned this lesson in your 20s, what you could have accomplished. I mean, here you are.
Life's happening for you, Jen.
I know, but I can't go there.
But
because
look at the story.
It drives me crazy. I mean, this came out. I have a second book that's already done and illustrated, and I'm working on the third. I do. Yes.
I want to hit on that for a minute though, because I've had that I've had people tell me that, like, do you wish you would have not gone through the 10 years of, depression, anxiety, and literal hell that I went through, I put myself through. And at first I was like, yeah, I do wish I would have not had to gone through that. Mm-hmm. But now that I've looked back, I had to go through that because that's what has helped me become the person I am today.
Oh, absolutely.
That's given me my story. That's given me the backing. So many people ask, like, you don't have any experience to do that kind of stuff, like a podcast. I was like, bet your ass I do.
Who does?
Exactly.
I mean, like, we all just need to move forward, take one step.
I've lived a life. I've lived a full life. And I don't share anything but that.
Yes.
And so
you have every right to be here.
I embrace my past.
Love it.
I regretted it at first. I did regret a lot. But I've turned that regret into appreciation and gratitude.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's been a hard thing because that's something that I still struggle with, forgiving myself, putting myself through that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where that forgiveness comes into play because we're hard on ourselves.
Oh, so hard.
Like you were saying, we are our worst critic.
Oh, awful.
Like
Yes.
for you at 5 years old, it was my fault.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It was my fault.
Yep.
I mean, that is hard
Mm-hmm.
to have that kind of thought at a 5-year-old.
Yeah. And live a life.
And
like
let
that.
alone live up until you're 45, having that rooted into you, your belief,
Right. And not even knowing it.
and not even knowing it.
But yeah, every decision is made on that, on that story.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
So crazy. to
Crazy.
think
We're
about.
amazing people, Alex. We're awesome.
Are we?
We are. You're awesome. I think you're awesome. That's great.
It's
That's
fun.
great.
Honestly, I look at life going, we have one life to live.
Yeah.
We'll never have February 21st, 2023 ever again. This is it. This is how we're spending our day today. And we have two choices: either regret it and look down upon it, or be grateful that we had the opportunity to actually have it. There's really no other
for sure.
choice.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And I think if more people actually just sat down and looked at all the little conveniences they have in life.
Oh, isn't it amazing?
Like, we woke up this morning alive next to
Right.
someone who loves us for who we are.
Right.
I had a hot cup of coffee, drove a truck to an office that has, heater because it was a little cold outside, and you just look at all these little things. And for me to bitch and moan about, oh, this, oh, that, it's hard for me to do nowadays. You know what I'm saying? Because life is what you create, and I want to create a life of gratitude.
Yeah.
And sometimes
it's-
that's hard, and sometimes you need the trauma in your life to recognize and realize it again. To actually know, Alex, get back on track. You have a lot going for you.
Right. Right. But don't you think that it's just human nature to find, I don't want to say find the bad because I feel like I'm such an optimist, but to find something wrong in any situation that we're in.
Oh, negativity is 100%.
Yeah. It's just, I just think it's so
It
easy
is
and
100%.
accessible.
You immediately go to the negative. I mean,
Yeah.
you immediately go to the worry. You immediately go to, how often do I have it when my parents call me and the first reaction is like, crap, I hope they're not in the hospital.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Why do I do that? I
Right.
know they're fine. Why do I immediately go like, oh, something bad happened when my parents call me? Because they're older? Because that's just how our brains are trained. We have to choose to be positive every single day. And I honestly think we get so caught up in the minutia of life that we forget to choose the positive.
Well, and I think we're always waiting for that ball to drop.
What ball though?
Yeah, what mysterious ball is out there that's going to drop? Why can't we just live in every moment just like, oh, I'm so grateful for this, I'm so grateful for that, and the small things? Because we know that where we both are in our lives right now will not stay the same forever. People will pass away. There will be trauma. There will be catastrophes. But we just assume that our life is going to stay like it is today forever.
I'm always telling myself and reminding myself, am I making a permanent decision on a temporary emotion?
That's a good one.
And that's something that I've been really thinking about lately. Am I making a permanent decision on a temporary emotion that I'm having right now? Because it's temporary.
It is.
All emotions change.
That's the
Everything in
thing.
life changes. Like my tomorrow is not going to be today. Hell, I don't even know if I'm going to be here tomorrow.
Right. Right.
You
And
know?
just being able to sit, like this is a really uncomfortable emotion.
Yeah.
During during the hardest times in our marriage therapy, that it was brutal. It was so brutal, not the fact that there was a chance that we would split up. It was that my story was like clinging to me like nothing else. And for me to get rid of that story was painful.
But did you get rid of it?
Well,
I wanna-
no,
yeah.
but just the realization of how I was living my life as
Exactly.
the traumatized
Yeah.
child. But I remember I would do meditations every morning, and I was just in such anxiety constantly. And I just remember every morning I would think, today I'm going to laugh really hard. Today I'm going to smile. I'm going to think something's funny, and I'm going to laugh.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to get me through this day. that one thing. And I don't know if it happened, but it got me to another day.
Yeah.
And then that morning, today I'm going to laugh really hard. And I don't know what it's going to be about, but I'm going to find happiness, some kind of happiness in today. And that will lead me to another day.
You know, you're bringing up past that. I remember when I would do that. Today I'm just going to wake up. I'm just going to get out of bed. Today I'm just going to take a shower. I'm not going to shave. I just want to shower. And guess what? I hope people realize and understand that that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to have days like that.
Yeah.
Like you've said before, there are some times in because of your past trauma, you do resort back into that anxiety. You do fall back into that 5-year-old little girl.
Quickly and easily, because it's such a pattern in my life.
It's there.
What I've lived.
But the thing, and it's okay. That's one thing that I want people to understand, that it's okay to do it.
Yeah, it is.
It's having the people, surrounding yourself with those people that will help you come back out.
Right.
And having that mental state to actually come back out.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. And really figuring out a plan, like a go-to of what helps you get out of that.
Yeah.
You know, like if I do not meditate every morning, I can pretty much guarantee that something's going to trigger me during the day. Now that's not, but it just won't affect me as much as if I had meditated that morning or journaled or read a great book. I'm improving, I'm growing, I'm doing something, reached out to a friend, spent time with the people that I love, spent time with people who really inspire me is a big one. I protect my environment so ridiculous.
I know you guys.
Ridiculous.
You guys really do. I mean, you want to hang out with people that inspire and uplift you.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I've seen. I see it. Like I see it with when we're around you and everything like that, and I admire it. It's something that I've tried to emulate in my life as well. Like, okay, do these people actually serve me, or are they bringing me down?
Right.
You know?
And it doesn't mean that you can't love them.
Yeah.
But I always say, I might love you from across the street, across the city,
Always.
across the state, across the country, on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean I'm going to give you my time and my energy. But I will love you and I will wish you well.
There's only
and
so
I will
much
wish
more time
happiness
we
in your
have in life.
Yes. You know what? The older you get, you know, all these kids that we have, and then we have our first grandbaby coming on the way.
I mean, I'm so excited.
Yeah, that your life gets busy. And you do. I think that comes of a very important key part of who do you spend your time with? Who do you want to spend your time with? Because there's not a lot of time extra that you have.
No.
And you want to spend those time with people that you love and adore and you learn from. Like I have a dear friend who I go to lunch with, and she's always like, what book did you read? I've been reading this book. And we're always talking books and like, what have you learned in that? And what, just, you know, those kinds of people always like pushing me to do, you know, the ones I feel accountable to. Then there are other ones where I'm like, I better be on my A game because I know that this person's on their A game and I want to show up for them.
Yeah.
So I better be doing things
it
for
pushes
me to
you
be
to
able
be better every single day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I agree with you 100% there. Well, I mean, you talked a little bit about your future and what's next for Jen. I mean, you got 2 books.
2 books
in the works.
Yep.
So this is a series.
It's a series. I'm writing the 3rd one right now. So this one is, you know, talking about death and how we're always connected. Love is always connecting us even after death. In the book, Jenny's mother dies. And then Jenny's able to recall the story, the lesson that her mother has taught her, that you're always connected. And so she knows her mother will always be with her. And again, for me, my story was God's made a mistake. I'm not enough to be able to keep my mother alive, to now my story is changed that I feel guided by a loving mother daily. That story that I live in created this book. The story that I lived in as a child never would have been able to create this book.
Let's talk about that a little bit. You changed your story.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Talk about that. I mean, and so many people are, you know, that saying, well, this is just who I am.
Yes.
I hate that saying.
I think it's a load of crap.
I used to tell myself that.
Oh, I think we all have. We all have. This is just who I am.
I mean, if you would sit back and, well, this is just who I am. I'm that 5-year-old daughter. None of this would have come to pass.
Right.
You changed your story. Talk about that, changing your story.
Well, I think it was during the self-work and doing, you know, that nagging feeling. You have something to do. You have something to contribute. You know, it's interesting. This just came up. George would always ask me, when we had, we have 5 children, and he was over here building company, and I was staying home with them, taking care of them. And he would always ask me, what's your legacy? What's your legacy? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess raising these kids is my legacy.
Kids,
I don't know. Here he was doing these great things and speaking and building and changing people's lives. And I'm like, I don't do that. I'm home with these kids, and I just feel like it's the mundane every day.
Yeah.
But with me being able to work on myself, to start loving myself and accepting myself, and even telling myself, hey, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
I am proud of you. Like words I've never heard growing up. And starting to write the books, those little moments came up where I felt so guided by my mother, so guided. And I'm like, okay, this is my story. Like, I can't deny that we're not connected with those who have passed on. I can no longer deny that. And I know she loves me. I mean, I feel it. I feel it when I share the book with someone, that I'm able to help someone else.
Yeah.
I feel that love. And I'm like, Mom, this wouldn't be here without you. And in my meditations, I would ask the question, Mom, what are the words we need to write? Like, we're writing this together. I truly felt like we were writing it together. And I would say, okay, I'm really stuck on this page. What do I need? What words do I need to write down to move forward? Help me. Help me.
Yeah.
And this is what it's turned into. And I can't deny that she's not with me.
Honestly,
I know she is.
You have a glow.
Oh, you're
every
so
time you
kind.
talk about your book.
I know.
Every
it's
time
like,
you bring it up, every time, even on your social media now, it's just like, just your presence and your happiness and just everything. It does bring you joy. And
it does.
That
sure.
alone will touch so many people.
It does. It's my mission.
So when are your next 2 books coming out?
So the next one is done. And the next one is actually a continuation. It's a conversation between Jenny and her father. And her father tells her how her mother really died, which is by suicide. So that one obviously hits close to home, but it's a topic that we need to start talking about.
More and more.
And unfortunately, it's becoming more and more common. And the children are getting younger and younger. At the beginning of COVID, I always thought that it was actually going to be just Jenny and her working on sadness or loneliness. But at the beginning of COVID, our cute little Bella, one of her very best friends had died from suicide. And she was 14 years old. And to see your daughter go through that experience at that age, and then see how people reacted. I mean, it brought up a couple things, actually, that I had no idea.
Yeah.
How much shame is around suicide. Like me being a survivor of suicide, I now have to tell you, my mother died from suicide. But Alex, what I'm really telling you is my biggest, darkest secret, that I'm not enough. And I wasn't enough to be able to keep her alive. So that's so shameful. And just seeing how people reacted, the school system, people surrounding, and rightfully so, it's how I reacted.
Yeah.
I said, we need to start talking about this. We need to start talking about suicide. We need to help the children who have experienced this in their life personally. These are the emotions. She really goes through the emotions, and she's talking to her father like, why do I feel this? Why didn't she say goodbye to me? Why do I feel so angry? Why do I feel so sad? What do I do? And it's really talks about talking about your feelings. Yeah. And it's also, I think it's good for a parent. I think it's very common for a parent to lie to a child about suicide.
I agree.
I think, one, because they don't think a child will understand, and rightfully so. I was 5. I didn't even know what death was, let alone suicide. And
they think they're protecting them.
They think they're protecting them. And then second, I think they are struggling so much. They don't even know how to have the conversation because they can't have the conversation. Take care of themselves.
Well, they can't have the conversation with themselves.
Yes, exactly.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
You look at your past experience with your father.
Right.
Could he really have that conversation with himself looking back?
And and just even going through that has been so healing with my father. Just like, you know what? You did the best you could with what you knew how. Mm-hmm. He had a lot of trauma in his childhood from stories that I hear, and it's okay. He did the best he could do. And what he knew was he had to provide for these 3 children.
And he did.
He did. He did. Could he be there emotionally? No. But I think, he had trauma from his childhood. I don't think he and my mother had a relationship where they could treat each other with an open heart.
Yeah.
They had close hearts as well for whatever reasons,
And we'll never know, really.
And we'll never know. We'll never know. But he did the best he could with what he knew how. And kudos to him for showing up. So can I, hold grudges against him, which I did a lot.
I can only imagine the
Anger
grudges.
against him for years.
And
Absolutely. Was it justified? Sure.
Absolutely.
But on the flip side, he really did the best he could with what he knew. So for that, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that he showed up in that arena.
And honestly, to have that kind of sense, that sense and kind of forgiveness in your heart,
yeah,
it's taken a lot, I bet you.
Oh, for sure. But you know what? It's
so
such
worth
freedom.
It. And it's so worth it.
Such freedom.
Talk about joy.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk about the joy that we're supposed to have in our life.
Yep.
Simple forgiveness.
Simple forgiveness is such a huge thing because if you are so consumed with sadness and anger and fear, I call it wiggle room.
Yeah.
There's no room for joy to come in there because you are full of all of this other opposing emotion. You got to make a little wiggle room. You got to start forgiving to get rid of some of that anger to be able to let joy fall into your life. You have to be able to do that.
I love that. The wiggle room.
You got to make a little wiggle room.
I need more wiggle room in my life. I love that, Jen.
We all do. We all do.
Well, where can people pick up the book?
You know what? It's on Amazon.
Okay.
I will be with you always under Jennifer Morris.
Okay.
Right,
you want to show it to the camera here?
Amazon. And also you can get to it on my website, loveconnexus.com.
Okay.
Go on there and there's a link to Amazon as well.
And you're on social media.
Social media, right now, Instagram. This is a whole new world for me. I got to be honest because being able to go through this process, things kind of start falling into place. So
yes,
Jennifer_Morris Bunny. I just had to add the bunny in there in case someone was looking for that.
Even you got the bunny.
You got the bunny, so you can get the bunny as well. If there's someone who in your life where you might need it, it's there to you to give you some love and comfort.
I love it. Well, Jen, thank you so much for being on.
Hey, thanks,
and
Alex.
thank you for sharing your story. Honestly, I love you guys. I love you.
You create a safe space for me to be able to do that. So for that, I am so grateful. And, you are meant to have a seat at the table. You're totally worthy to be in this arena. You do an amazing job. And I have felt comfortable and I was able to be vulnerable because of you. So thank you.
I'm not going to cry. Leave me. Stop it.
Honestly, you're a good man. Thank you.
That means so much to me. Thank you so much for being on. And reach out, guys. Go buy her book. Support her. I know I will. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.